We are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of dreams.
Imagine what would have happened if we hadn't attracted the magic we had back when we couldn't fathom life is a fantasy, not with the vanity, not the way it was back then. So I grab my pen and write it down like a scripture. Mr. Mystic, making hits for the misfits. The show where you don't know what you don't know when it's on again with Sean and Jonathan.
Welcome to Metamystics, where you don't know what you don't know. My name's Jonathan, and tonight we have a very special guest, Ronnie Pontiac. It's been a minute, sir. It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me back, man.
Yeah, man. So it's been pretty crazy here for you over the past few months, huh? I mean, unfortunately, things are happening and time goes by, and yeah, man. I watched your the tribute to your wife, and that was beautiful. I mean, it went on and on and on. I was like, man, she really influenced a lot of lives, huh?
Yeah, she did. She was amazing.
Yeah. She seemed great, man. I wish I could have gotten to talk to her too. But yeah, it's actually a reason why Sean's not, my co-host Sean is not able to be here tonight is because somebody in his family just recently passed too. So,
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
Please give him my condolences.
Sure will, man. But so how's your day going today, man?
Pretty good. It's super hot out here in LA. This is my second podcast today.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, which is cool. I've been swimming a lot, so that's good.
Oh, nice.
The
Yeah.
pool is still cold. It won't be for long.
Yeah. It's gonna start heating up here soon. What is it, March 21st or something like that? That's whenever the new cycle on the witch's wheel comes around, I think.
It's unusually hot here, actually. Well, it's kind of cool, though. I kind of like it, as it were.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's been a minute since I've been out to LA. I just came from Arizona a few months ago, and it doesn't really get that cold out there. It's like it's a brisk 55 at the worst.
Yeah.
No,
it's hot there. Too hot.
Yeah.
It's a dry heat, right?
Oh yeah, very dry. It'll crack
That's what
you
they
up.
always say.
So, what have you been getting into anything new here lately?
Wow, how do I answer that? Yeah, I mean, my whole life has switched around in some amazing ways. We did everything together. Like, she was my guitar player, my singer, my co-author, my editor. She was my co-producer in documentary films. She was a martial artist and an artist, and so she filled my life. And we did everything in this kind of amazing unity. And so without her, I have to recalibrate everything that I do and learn how to do it without her incredible influence. So it's intimidating because she was really my best editor and somebody I counted on to make sure that whatever I was doing was really good. Like, she was cool. And so I'd come up with a riff, and then she'd come up with an even cooler riff to put with it. And so now it's just me, and I'm trying to rise to the occasion and like put to work what I learned from her. And then also, it's very strange because even though I've studied this stuff all my life, and the last book that we wrote together, which just came out, is about life after death, she kind of blew my mind. Like, she's been doing things, and all the stuff that you hear about, electronic manipulation, people have seen apparitions of her. She's spoken to people. She's delivered messages through other people to me. Experiences like 3 different people who don't know each other delivering the same message to me on the same day. All this spectacular stuff. And then some things that I've experienced directly from her. It doesn't change the loss of the physical presence. I'm still totally grief stricken and in longing for her. Like just the things that you see every day when you love somebody. Her incredible eyes, her laughter, our private language, the jokes that we have acquired over the years, and the knowledge of each other's taste on everything from food to favorite songs, and the shared history, and little like she loved to lay on me when we were like, we'd watch TV sometimes, and she'd flip her hair back into my face, right? And I loved it, and she knew I loved it, so she'd do it with this little flick, and like I could smell her hair, and it was like heaven to me, and I really miss that. And so my life is filled with this longing that is impossible to fulfill, and yet she's doing these things. Her memory of our lives together is obviously intact because she has sent messages through people that were just completely detailed, mind-blowingly detailed, and also her sense of humor is intact because she's still really funny. And so trying to deal with that is surreal. Like I feel like I'm on acid or something. My sense of, even though I've studied this all my life, my reality is like what I thought was real isn't real. And then now how do I deal with this? How do I communicate with her? Can I work with her? Like, can I get enough sensitivity that we can still work together, which I hope to achieve, but at the moment I can't. And I get messages from her like, people tell me that she wants me to know that I'm too addicted to her physicality. And I'm like, yeah, and then she's done things like, I had a real hard time around her birthday, which is December 22nd, and then Christmas. When she was a kid, she was one of those kids that didn't get presents on both, right? Only on Christmas because it was too close.
So close, yeah.
So all our lives together, I would like to spoil her with presents on both, and I would spend months like assembling these incredible presents, and so it was very dark for me, my first birthday without her, and I slipped back somewhat into who I was before I met her, which was a violent kind of angry person who was a nihilist really, and there were shadows of that arising in me. I felt like, fuck you, world, like you took her from me.
Yeah.
And I was bleak, I'd spent a lot of time crying. I spent a lot of time being angry. And on New Year's Eve night, I dreamed about her, and she was sitting across from me, and she had a very serious expression on her face, and I was miserable just like I was in real life. And I said, "Do you see how much pain I'm in?" And she said, "Yeah, I've been watching you. The show sucks."
Oh my God.
Which was fully her sense of humor. And actually, I woke up from that dream laughing. It like completely switched me over. And I started to think of it as, yeah, put on a good show, man. Like Tamara's watching. So all this stuff has changed my life completely. And so I don't even know, most of the things I'm doing now were set in motion before this happened. And so I'm trying to figure out, like, what do I do next? Because it's obviously going to be different.
Man, that's just so insane. First of all, that you guys were writing that book on, what'd you say, the kind of life after death, right?
Mm-hmm.
And was that kind of encompassing maybe some near-death experience stories or out-of-body experiences?
Well, it's even weirder, man. It's very strange because it was about these two people, a couple, Stuart Edward White and his wife, Elizabeth Grant White, and her nickname was Betty. And they were super famous in the 30s and 40s. She was a medium, but she wasn't the kind of medium that did past lives or health readings or talked about Atlantis. Her whole thing was they were teaching her how to cross over into the after-death consciousness while she was still in the body.
Whoa.
And then report back about what she understood about the world here and the world there. And so then, is talk about history rhyming. I mean, the weirdest thing is that when they were about to publish her most important book, just before World War II started, she had never been sick, and super healthy, vivacious, incredible woman, and she suddenly got sick, and she died relatively quickly before the book came out. And she started to do these paranormal appearances and all kinds of proof of her presence. It was so impressive that Carl Jung was convinced that she had provided evidence of the survival of consciousness after death. So we had been studying them for a long time. They're totally forgotten now. And so we had to go into like court records and newspaper records and all these things trying to find information. And and then the same thing happened to us. We finished the book. Tamara had not seen a doctor in 40 years. I mean, I don't know if she had a cold twice in all that time. She was the healthiest person I've ever met. And then suddenly, she got sick, and 5 days at home, rapid decline. Then I found her unresponsive and had to call an ambulance, and then 5 days in the hospital. And they told me she was getting better. She'd be home any day. They were super impressed by how quickly she was healing. And they made a mistake. They screwed up when they did a test on her, and they caused internal bleeding, and they couldn't stop it, and she was gone.
Wow.
And 10 days altogether, She'd finished editing the last chapter of my Rosicrucian book, and then the next day she was sick. And so this was almost identical to what happened with Betty, and they were very similar people. They both of them really were weirdly ageless. Betty was supposedly in her late 50s. She still had brown hair, and she was didn't have wrinkles. She was super youthful, and Tamara was the same way. She didn't seem to age. I mean, she was naturally blonde her whole life, and didn't get any of the signs of age that you would expect somebody to get. And like Betty too, she was incredible with animals and with plants. She treated them like they were almost like they were equals, like with love. I mean, she loved nature deeply, and so did Betty. And both of them had extraordinary experiences with nature. So it was so eerie that this thing, like this rhyme happened, and then on top of it, so I come home and I'm completely devastated. I mean, just in shock. It just happened so fast. And I had a friend who was into the same stuff that we've been writing the book on. We had shared it while we were researching it, and he said, "Man, wouldn't it be something if Tamara did what Betty did?" And like a week later, I started getting all these messages from people. I saw Tamara standing in front of me. There seemed to be people who had prayed for her while she was sick, whatever their religion was. There were Buddhists and Sufis and Christians and all kinds of people all around the world. And she would pop up in their lives one way or another, and sometimes delivering messages. And then especially the people that she'd been working with, because she mentored a number of women as artists, as musicians, as filmmakers. And she kept doing it. They would have dreams about her, and she would tell them what to do next in the film and stuff. And it was very detailed. It wasn't like their imagination filling it in. It was her, just herself, and kind of playing practical jokes on them. And I just kept getting these messages. I'll give you one example that was mind blowing. I believe that all human beings have within themselves a Hausfrau, and the Hausfrau comes out when the right conditions, cause the Hausfrau to come out. And so Tamara had this big 3.5-foot plastic fan that she kept on all the time in the kitchen. And I had read reviews on Amazon that said the thing was a fire hazard. And so I became the neurotic Hausfrau. I started nagging her, and I was like, God, turn that thing off when you leave the room. You're going to burn the house down. And she had no patience for that. She just rolled her eyes and leave it on. And so I turned it off when she left the room, and she'd come back in and turn it on. And eventually she got annoyed enough that when I would tell her, please turn it off at least when you come to bed or something like that, she'd say, okay, Mildred. And so Mildred became my nickname if I was being a neurotic housefrau. And it was somewhat hurtful, as you can imagine. And so sometimes she'd even refer to herself that way. She'd be like, oh man, I've gone all Mildred on this shit. So after her passing, she had come to me the week after. I didn't know what I didn't sleep or eat for a week. Like I was just blown away. And I knew that the week coming up, I was going to have to deal with cremation and with death certificates. And I was just, fuck, how am I going to do this? Like, I just can't. And so at dawn, I remembered something I learned from the book we had worked on, which was the power of appreciation and opening your soul to communication. So at dawn, I just laid there and I started talking to her, and I was just telling her how much I love her and all the great things that happened between us and all these things. And so I had an experience where it was like she got on top of me almost. It was everything was like light. I didn't see any details. I saw glimpses of her, but I think that was really me filling in just because I knew it was her and I was my unconscious was showing me pictures of her. And it was I would call it a soul fusion. It was like a really long lasting orgasm almost. Wow. And the amazing thing about it was that when it was over, she had transmitted to me her perspective, which was that things like ashes and death certificates are trivial. They're like cigarette ashes. There's something left over after an experience, and you clean them up and you move on. And I really felt that to my core after this experience. But then, a couple weeks later, I got reeled down, and I was just missing her physically. And I said to her, hey, do something. Like, show me a sign. I mean, you're talking to everybody but me, And first, one of the two cats that she chose just before she left, the one that would only respond to her, suddenly perked up her ears and like got all stiff like she would when Tamara called her, and then ran up to the chair where Tamara used to sit.
Whoa.
And I was like, whoa. I was like, maybe that's the sign, But then about 10 minutes later, that damn fan turned on.
Really?
And so I went and checked it. I was like, does it have a timer? Is the plug loose? Could the cats have turned it on? Like what? No, there was no explanation. This happened for first 9 times, always to punctuate something. It never happened random. Like the second time it happened was when I was telling a friend about it, and I was upstairs and I went, man, the weirdest thing happened. That fan turned on. And he was like, yeah, that's Tamara, man. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it's her sense of humor, like of all the things she could have done, she turned on that fan. And so I go downstairs, the fan is on again, right? That kind of thing.
It does seem to happen, like this weird coincidental, almost synchromistically happening at the perfect time. And
yeah, exactly.
That to me is like the obvious sign that there is absolutely some kind of communication coming from the other side.
Exactly. So it was pretty amazing. But then a couple months later, I got an email from someone who neither she nor I had known very well, somebody who lived on the other side of the country. We'd had a few social media interactions, but no real conversations. And this woman said to me, hey, I've been talking to Tamara for a couple months, and I don't normally do this. Like, I'm not a medium, but Tamara's like been communicating, and so I've been writing it down. And I finally got up the nerve to send it to you. Will you tell me, is this really Tamara or am I crazy? Well, there was a bunch of hits in it, right? I mean, there was a lot of really accurate stuff, but the real killer was there was a sentence in there that said, tell Ronnie to tell Mildred that I love her.
Oh my God, that just gave me chills, dude. That is wild.
How
would she know that?
How would she pull the name Mildred out her ass, man? I mean, that's the craziest name, And then also the way it was delivered, because when somebody passes like that, you spend a lot of time in regret. You think of everything you ever did that you might have done better, or some things you wish you had done. And of course, one of my regrets was that I had nagged her about the stupid fan and earned that nickname. So to be told, no, I love Mildred, that was profound,
That's
like it
sweet.
made really felt it. And I really felt that. And so that's just one example. There's many, many, I could go on and on of that kind of accuracy, like crazy, like, 20 sentences, and every single one is about something that was deeply personal to us.
Man, it's and kind of like you were saying. I mean, you guys were trying to write this book together about this couple, and then she ends up dying right before the book is to be released. And it's almost like maybe one day somebody's gonna be studying y'all's case and write a book about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. It's very strange. I figured that I've really given a lot of thought to why this would have happened this way. I mean, it seems like in some sense we seem to have committed at some point to being part of the mission that these other people had. And so the one conclusion I could come to was that they were super wealthy. Like they don't even seem real. I mean, the guy was like this famous writer who was friends with Teddy Roosevelt, and Teddy Roosevelt said he was the best shot he'd ever met, and with a pistol or a rifle. They were like, they had yachts, and they were their idea of a vacation was taking their yacht from Santa Barbara to Alaska, when Alaska was just wilderness, really, and no crew, just the two of them and a cat. And then they would camp out in the Alaskan wilderness for a month, and they went to Africa, and he was one of the first people in certain parts of Africa. He's got a grove of sequoia named after him. And they even went through the Depression without any problem because they were making movies out of his books. And so you can't really, and plus they worked on this for 20 years, like practice. And then I think that in a way, the reason this happened is because Tamara showed that you didn't need that. Like, you didn't need to do 20 years of practice, that it's human, that all of us can do it,
Yep.
which is what these people were trying to say. But I think it's harder to believe it coming from them, especially because the books were written in the early 20th century, so the language they used isn't that accessible. And so here's Tamara, a riot girl punk rocker. She never did intensive mediumship or, basically took lessons in how to cross over, and nothing like that. And she's just knowing about what they did, she was able to replicate it. And that's a message to all of us, I think, that this is something we can all do.
So, able to replicate it. What do you mean by that?
I think that what happened was that she, having studied this work, she didn't need practice and like, okay, now I'm on the other side. How do I communicate? She was just like, hey, Betty did it, so I can do
Oh.
it.
So
You
you think
know,
that's
I'm
something that may be going through her mind on the other side?
exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. And then does it. So it makes it seem like this is something that's natural. But we live
Yeah.
in a society where we're taught that it's either from the psychiatric point of view, it's literally insane. From the point of view of Christianity, this is all like necromancy,
Yeah.
right? So we're just taught, and materialism tells us that this is impossible. So we're not allowed to feel this way or to understand or have these communications, even though every indigenous culture, every source of everybody in America, if you go back far enough, they're talking to their ancestors.
100%. Yeah. And a lot of people will say, well, that's not really their ancestors. That's some kind of negative entity that is portraying that ancestor.
Right.
And I don't know. I don't remember ever dying. I'm sure we all have plenty of times, but I don't
Right.
remember exactly what the rules are on the other side. But my
Right.
thing is that how are they able to be so specific? Like just the little thing about, going to the friend and then that friend relaying that message to you about the fan and Mildred, and it's like I'm sorry. Like, I think that we're giving way too much credit to demons. Like, honestly, I really think that people do that way too often.
I actually think that it's not a very popular point of view, but my belief is that one of the worst things about human beings is that we invent supernatural beings to blame for just how shitty we are.
Yeah.
You know, we don't need demons. Human beings suck. And
Yep.
if you don't believe it, look at chimps who are our closest DNA relatives, and they're vicious, that they can be awful. And I think that human beings are really fucked. You know, we're cruel and we're vicious. And so we invent, you know, archons and demons and all kinds of shit to blame for how people behave instead of accepting. And I feel like, how are we ever going to evolve if we keep blaming supernatural beings? And I also think the other thing about that is that this is used, I think, by religions in order to control people. Like, what are the two best ways to control people, right? To get people to go fight wars for you, and to be just constantly questioning themselves and not have any agency that emerges from within their own core. One, you fuck up their sexuality, right?
Yep.
So, you know, no, all these things are wrong. You can't do them. And you can only do this. And you shouldn't even think this. And if you even look at somebody and think something is as good as doing it, you're going to go to hell. You know, so once you cut off sexuality, as Wilhelm Reich pointed out, you're making a soldier. You're making somebody who's repressed and angry and also willing to be told what to do, as long as it gives them an opportunity to act out. And that's why in war, you have always seen it's like, for soldiers, it's like, okay, now you can do whatever you want. You can rape, you can, you know, screw anything that crosses your path. And then I think the other thing they do is they cut off our connection to those who have died, to the ability to be in touch with those that we love, and to make it so that it's only available through them, right? So if you're grieving somebody you lost, you need to go to the priest, and the priest has to do the rituals, and hopefully they won't go to hell, and no, you can't communicate with them. And this takes away one of the most primal elements of indigenous cultures, where we turn to the ancestors for wisdom, because they have a view of the world that isn't obstructed in the way that our view is, because of our brains and our bodies and our social situations and all this stuff. And so we can say to them, what do I do? And how do I treat this situation? And so I think that that's deliberate. I think that cutting off our connection with the dead and cutting off our sexuality is what has enabled this enshittification of the world, and turning people against each other with these tribalist wars.
100%. And that actually, I wrote down some questions, because I knew this is my first time like interviewing somebody by myself. So I was like, all right, I got to make sure I, ask some awesome questions here. We've been studying a lot about secret societies and, occult practices and stuff like that. Really have a deep fascination for it and an adoration for it, really. And one thing that we see, I come from the conspiracy realm. I used to have a conspiracy podcast, and we would talk about, all the secret societies and the Freemasons and the fucking Illuminati and all this other kind of stuff. And they got to show you, or else the ritual won't work and stuff like that. And I'm like, the more I learn about secret societies and things of the sort, I see why they had to go into hiding. I see why it had to be secret. And so is that your opinion, that the reason why these things were secret was because not everybody is going to understand this kind of stuff? I don't know if it was necessarily gate kept. I mean, I'm sure that there was some sort of gatekeeping. Maybe there was some initiation process. You wouldn't be able to talk for 7 years or something like that. But I think that for the most part, it was secret because look at what was going on with them. I mean, they were all the negative things. I mean, all the witch trials and all the other crazy stuff, and being called satanic and being called demonic, and, God doesn't hide these kind of things, and all these different Bible quotes and whatnot. But is that where you come from as far as secret societies go, that they had to go into hiding?
Yeah, it's interesting because that Rosicrucian book that I wrote, the Rosicrucian Counterculture, it's based on all the most recent research. There's been a revolution in academia where they're finally studying esoteric stuff, the history of it. And they get access to things that no one before them has had access to. So it radically changes, for example, what someone like Manly Hall may have said about them, because he didn't know what was actually there hidden in the archives. And as you probably know, the Rosicrucians are a good example because on the one hand, there's a bunch of people who, when you discuss them, they think of them as reptilians and Illuminati, and they're behind the Freemasons, and they're a secret order that's ruling the world and keeping humanity enslaved and all this.
Crazy.
And there's also other people who think that they're secret masters who are literally invisible and they can appear at will and they know more than any human being. And if you act the right way long enough, maybe they'll accept you and then they'll enlighten you with what they know and you can become part of this order.
Hey, sounds fun.
And so what it looks like when you look at the research, we have those manifestos at the beginning of the Rosicrucian order, right? We have 3 of them. And it looks like the people or person at the center of this was college students. Like, these were college students reading radical books and having radical professors. And so what did they believe? Like, well, at the time, there was all this celestial phenomenon going on. There was a huge comet. There was a big conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn bright in the sky. There were just things that both the Catholics and the Protestants thought were signs of the end of the old order, or maybe even the end of the world. So the Catholics thought, well, this is the end of the Protestants, and the Protestants thought, well, this is the end of the Catholics. The Catholics had been dominant for centuries, and if you want to talk about a surveillance culture, I mean, a worldwide awesome surveillance culture, let's talk about the confessional, because everybody that went into that confessional had to tell the truth, otherwise their soul was going to be damned eternally. And the priests were obligated to tell their superiors anything said in that confessional that might be important to the church. And that would go all the way up to the Pope if it was important enough.
It's the CIA before the CIA, essentially.
Wow, I mean, the CIA wishes, right? You know, I mean, because people are afraid they're gonna burn eternally. So yeah, they're gonna tell you, and they controlled Europe not just with that, but also with the Inquisition and the threat of torture and dying some horrible death. I mean, you could be. There was one guy, for instance, who sold books, and he sold Agrippa's occult philosophy to a guy, and he was caught. And this poor bookseller was drowned. He was executed for selling that book. So they had to be very careful. And so what was in the manifesto? Well, we like science. We think that science is a way to get good medicines. We think science is a gift from God, that nature is full of these secrets that we can study and that will help us to have better lives and to be healthier. Whereas the Catholic Church was saying science was bad. It was heresy. It was you weren't supposed to be fiddling with these secrets of nature because they were satanic. What else did the Rosicrucians say? Well, they said the Pope was the Antichrist. They said, look, how in the world does this guy that lives in a gold, city surrounded with wealth and has armies at his disposal, what does that have to do with Jesus? What does that have to do with the teaching of Jesus? Nothing. And so this is some evil empire. This isn't really the something that Jesus wanted to establish.
100%. And actually, the Cathars said the same thing about the Pope as well. And unfortunately, they got all hunted down, and
they did.
It's
yeah,
just crazy, man.
And so did many others. And so this idea was also mixed up with a certain amount of satire. The Protestants, especially the German Protestants, were notoriously not funny. But the English had these musical theater troupes that would travel, and they were kind of bawdy and very funny. And We know that the author or authors saw them and was influenced by them and by the fact that they were that way, like people who get raised in these super strict families and then they run into rock and roll or punk rock and they're like, whoa, people live a completely different way and they say what they're thinking and they're actually saying what I'm thinking, but I'm not allowed to say. So this is what was behind these manifestos, and they could be compared to something like Ginsberg's Howl, right? They were this breakthrough in literature. They've been described as the first science fiction or the first magical realism, and in capturing these feelings and these ideas, this was circulated in manuscript. They did not intend to publish it. It was really just like something that was written and then, hey, read this. And then you'd read it and then you knew somebody who you knew was going to, oh my God, he's got to read this. So you'd make a copy by hand and then you'd give it to him. And it got as far as Scotland from Germany. And then there was this guy who lived in Bohemia, Moritz the Learned, a nobleman, and he got a copy and he thought, oh, I got to publish this. Because this is a great piece of propaganda. Like this could really raise the Protestant cause, and like maybe we'll fight a war and we'll get rid of these damn Catholics. And if nothing else, it's going to add to my prestige because I published this revolutionary document. He didn't ask permission. The people who were involved in writing it were horrified. Really, you can see in the subsequent manifestos, they were very unhappy with the results. And I think that Andre wrote it, Johann Valentin Andre. He was about 18 years old at the time of the first one. And there's a lot in his history, and there's pieces of these manifestos in his own journals. And there's another person who was proposed as being the possible author, but he wrote in his copy of one of the manifestos, I think Andre wrote this. And so Andre would eventually publish a book called Menipus that was under his own name. And it was kind of like the fourth manifesto. The first three were anonymous. And the second one was like, okay, wait. The Confessio was like, you guys didn't get it. Because when it was released, it caused this massive reaction. There were books and pamphlets and arguments, and it was satanic. No, it's brilliant, and just ridiculous reaction. And so in the Confessio, he's kind of saying, no, nobody got it. Like, you guys don't get it. And the message really was, if you want a universal reformation, you've got to start in your own little corner of the world. You've got to get your own house in order and get your divine connection and experiment and discover the secrets of nature if you really want to change the world. You can't just say, I'm going to change the world. It happens through influence and example. But they didn't get it. They reacted the same way, right? They all freaked out again, and people were angry because, well, I wrote you and said I wanted to be a Rosicrucian, and I never heard from anybody, so it's all fake, and everything you can imagine. And the third one was really satirical, and had like elements that were obviously poking fun at the reaction to it. And Father CRC, who in the first one is this very noble, mysterious character who is held up as a sage who traveled in the East and learned the wisdom of alchemy and of the ancient philosophies and tried to bring it back and was laughed at by the Europeans, so he created a secret society. In the last book, he's an old man, and he's going through this weird adventure, and there's actually a woman involved in it. At one point, he's kind of depressed, and she sort of turns around and winks at the reader, and she says, hey, do you think if I slept with him, he might cheer up? Which is like classic British musical theater comedy, right? So the fourth book is this book, Menipus, which he publishes under his own name. And it's a list of like all the idiots, like all the idiotic reactions to the manifestos. He doesn't come right out and say it, that this is a reaction to the manifestos, but it's obvious. And one of the funniest things about it is that it's like, it's a study of scene killers, right? Even to this day, the people that he describes are the kind of people that show up when a really cool scene is happening and they ruin it. And so the kind of people are people who try to make money off the scene. the people who are experts on what's cool and what isn't, and and it's all these types. It was just, I mean, Tamara and I were laughing so hard because we recognized so many people from various scenes that we had been in, like Riot Girl and Anarcho Punk, and we were like, oh my God, it's the same people. The Collector was one of them, right? As soon as they enter, they fuck everything up, and then he also used historical characters. So he used the name Fama, which is the name of the first of the manifestos, as one of the characters. And of course, it was somebody addicted to fame. And that's another person who destroys the scene. And so that, I think that kind of, to me, that said, well, this is the guy, like that, this must be the guy. And then even more amazingly, I think, is that there was this brilliant philosopher of education named Comenius around that time, and he influenced education even to this day. Like, if only we we were listening to him. He had the idea way back then in the 1600s that all women and all indigenous people should be taught to read and write, which was like insanely radical at the time. He thought there should be the invention of a common language, so you could speak your own language, but we could all learn this other language and all speak to each other. He wanted all the most brilliant minds from all the countries on earth to be brought into one place, which he called the College of Light. And there they would be studying everything, nature and ancient philosophies, in order to better society. He had great ideas. And he had thought that, for instance, that you shouldn't you should play when you're educating people. Like, it shouldn't be, memorize this and strict and the kind of thing they were doing back then. It was supposed to be playful and natural.
Those are my favorite teachers back in high school.
Right. He wrote a letter to Andre, and he said, I think you are behind these Rosicrucians, and I would like to be a member of the order. And Andre wrote him back, and he said, not really an order, man. Like, it's just a group of friends. And it was kind of a joke. He uses the Latin word ludibrium, which is kind of a hoax. But I think the fact that Comenius figured out, I really think it's this Andre guy, you put together all these little hints, and it seems to point to him. Eventually, he would write a book called Christianopolis, which was taking the ideas of Rosicrucianism and then restating them in nice, polite Lutheran language and ideas. And so he didn't have to hide. But now, to get to your point, of course they were hiding. The reason they were called invisible, the invisible society, was because they had to be. They would be murdered by the church if they were publicly known. And they also didn't want all the idiots who were overreacting to find them. They would have spent all their time telling people, no, 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 that's not what we're doing. I mean, for example, to show you how hysterical it was, some smartass in Paris, one very hot summer, put up these posters all over Paris that said, we're the Rosicrucians, and we've just arrived in Paris. And don't come looking for us. We know who you are. I mean, it's a joke, And that Paris had a panic. Like, the newspapers were talking about how these satanic Rosicrucians had arrived in Paris, and everybody was freaking out. And the government actually got involved, and they found some poor schmuck who was a painter, and he was somebody that had bad morals and cussed a lot. And he said, "Yeah, I'm a Rosicrucian." And so they got him, and they interrogated him, and they put him in jail. And they said, "This, you see how rotten the Rosicrucians are? This guy is just look at him. I mean, he's terrible." So this is how ridiculous it all was. Now, if you were somebody who had this vision of a better future that you had put into this piece of clever literature, and you had friends, and together you were dreaming about this the way the world could be, this utopia, and then these were the reactions that you were getting, you'd be invisible too, man.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And it's kind of crazy because I think that, for good reason, I think that one, should be initiated to some sort, because otherwise you're not going to understand the context, you're not going to understand the symbolism, you're not going to know what the certain colors mean or certain numbers mean or certain symbols mean, any of this kind of stuff. And I think that it takes a great deal of even just starting off studying those before you can even begin to start to read a little bit of the literature. I think that you can read it maybe out of curiosity, see if maybe it resonates a little bit, and if it excites you. And that was one of the things with me, and we actually just covered a little bit of the Rosicrucians. I guess it was back in the summertime, and that was hands down, the Rosicrucians are absolutely my favorite secret society out of all of them, because there's so much mystery about the entire thing, but it seems like something that with practice and with understanding and with studying that, you can actually kind of develop a greater understanding of the world around you and of yourself, and my thing is that I was doing a little bit of research, and you're talking about this a little bit, but I couldn't figure out exactly when it started. Because there's this one Rosicrucian order. It's like the main order that people know, and they say that it was actually founded before Christianity was founded. But then I looked at it, and Rosicrucian means rosy cross, right? And isn't that kind of like an homage to the Jesus cross?
Yeah, there's a lot of theories about what the Rosy Cross is. Some people think that it's the blood of Jesus on the cross, the rose and the cross. Some people think that it's a symbol of it's much like in Hindu religion, you've got the symbol of the jewel in the lotus, right? Om Mani Padme Hum. And so the jewel is the soul and the lotus is the body. So the rose is the soul and the cross is the body. There are other people who talk about what they call Ras, which is some sort of mysterious biological substance, probably having to do with sex, and it's called the dew, and that this dew is what is the rose, and then the dew is what transforms the person who is stuck in the four dimension, like the planet, it's like the body again, and the four directions, let's call it, of the 3D world.
Well, that seems kind of reminiscent to a mushroom then, because the dew in the morning is ultimately what brings the mushrooms, right?
Right. Yeah, it could be connected to that. And so there's many theories. I think that what you're describing, people who say that it goes back to ancient Egypt, essentially.
Yeah.
This is the Western esoteric tradition. It has been painted that way for a long time, for centuries. The idea that it actually starts in ancient Egypt and it comes up through Pythagoras and Plato and other ancient Greek philosophers into Europe, and then it's developed by the Romans, by the Neoplatonists like Plotinus and Proclus, and then it comes up into the troubadours, and indeed the troubadours were obsessed with roses, and there are people, by the way, who think that the Rosicrucians originated among the Sufis, where the rose is a very important idea. And then so this idea has been circulated for a long time, and you run into it over and over again, Blavatsky and Manly Hall, and there is some truth to it. I mean, I don't think it's a direct connection, like there was teacher to student all the way back, but there are ideas that are found in ancient Egyptian religion, that are found in ancient Greek philosophy, that are found in et cetera, et cetera. And I think that there was an influence. And then as far as what you were saying about needing some kind of initiation, I think it's interesting because when I worked for Manly Hall, he did not take students. Like, people would always be coming up. And once I became his screener, I ran into a lot of people who were approaching me saying, hey, he appeared in a dream and he wanted me to come see him, and I was supposed to be a student, and I'd be like, he doesn't take students. And what he would say is that nature is your teacher, life is your teacher. And so there I was with him amidst all these manuscripts and books, working with him on them, and we never really had initiatory conversations where he conferred knowledge on me. Like, he let me follow my curiosity. He would answer questions if I had them, and I seldom had them because I wanted to figure it out for myself. And it's a process of, yes, you have to learn a lot, a lot of symbolism, a lot of history, a lot of culture. And in his case, he was heavily into Eastern culture as well, Taoism and Shingon Buddhism and Shinto. And so, but as you study all these things, and as you're living your life in a philosophical way and you're trying to have understanding, you kind of absorb the information. You begin to see these similarities, and you see the meaning behind the words. And you understand at a certain point that the words get in the way of the experience. And this is why we have today so much conflict and misunderstanding. I mean, there's whole, people are making money out there on the internet, having their podcasts and their brands, getting into hugely complex, intellectualized aspects. And for most of them, when I encounter their work, my suspicion is that they've never actually experienced what the words are talking about. Because if they did, they would have a completely different approach. And so for me, for example, I got pieces of how I finally, let's say, woke up my soul, or whatever you want to say, came from the ancient Taoist alchemical tradition of the golden flower. It came from the Rosicrucians. It came from Zen. It came from the Neoplatonists. It came from the Kabbalah. Like all these little things that filled in parts that suddenly lit up for me. And eventually, I reached a point where I realized that the words were holding me back. That I was too concerned with the details and with what the name meant, and when the experience was natural. And we're supposed to have this experience. What we're awakening is us, like our origin, which is that we are beings that originate outside time. And so we come here to experience and learn, and perhaps it's to learn compassion, right? Because if you're a being that doesn't experience mortality, you don't have a lot of need for compassion. You are destructive sort of instinctively because you don't care. I mean, it doesn't make any difference if something's destroyed, if it's going to continue anyway in some form. And so what do we learn when we come down here? We learn consequences, we learn compassion, we learn about beauty and about being co-creators of the world, and how to do that properly. And it's like a kindergarten, for infinite beings. And so I think that you have a lot of people today, is we have this glorious time right now. It's one of the saddest things to me about patriarchal religions, patriarchal monotheism, is that here we are with just about every religion and spiritual tradition ever known to humanity is online now.
At our fingertips.
Like books. Yeah, books that when I was at Manly Hall's place, there might have been 2 or 3 copies in the world, and you'd never see it, like good luck. But now it's a click away. It's right there online on Internet Archive.
Yeah.
And so here we have this wealth of to me, I learned this from Manly Hall. It just awoke an insatiable curiosity. Like, I want to know all of them. I want to but there's so many people that believe, no, my way is the only way, and all these other ways and all those people, they're all in hell because that's all wrong. And so you also have people who are what I call like collectors of ladders, right? Like they will argue about this ladder has 9 rungs and this ladder has 6 rungs and it's this tall but they don't climb the fucking ladder. Like you only need one.
Yeah, it's one thing
it's nice to.
I'm sorry. It's one thing to get to know the information, and it's an entirely other process to start applying it. And like kind of how you were talking about earlier, like there's so many people that know a great deal about the history of maybe certain secret societies or ancient traditions and stuff like that, but they don't know exactly how to implement it into their lives. I am always baffled whenever I hear about how somebody's so spiritual and they're eating healthy and they're jogging and they're doing all the things, and it seems just like an internet guru kind of character. but then they say that they can't meditate. They have a hard time meditating. I'm like, man, like I feel like you need to meditate on this stuff in order to allow it to really sink in, right?
Yeah, I recently saw somebody who was teaching to a rather large following that that love gets in the way of initiation. You know, like Ficino, who's at the heart of the whole damn thing, said that love is the key to magic. Like, it's like that's just wrong. You know, like love is the ultimate goal of all this stuff. Is you know, I can tell you from my own experiences that it teaches you how to love, and not just somebody else, not just yourself, but the world. And to have it, instead of being afraid of it or competitive or hateful, it teaches you to experience cherishing the world because of its impermanence and the miraculous magic of these experiences that we're all having. And then, particularly when you lose someone that you love, it breaks open your heart. Like you suddenly you are in a liminal state where everything in the world is like glowing with the spiritual presence, and when you have that love, the world becomes a, let's say, nature responds to you, like that you have magic, you have synchronicity, you have all kinds of experiences that are inexplicable. And so when I saw that, I just thought, oh wow, man. I mean, he's literally talking about, like, you know, if you've got a relationship where you're feeling deep love toward someone, then you're going to blow it as far as you know, awakening spiritually, which is some kind of a Christian and also Buddhist, you know, to a degree, kind of a hangover of the physical is bad, and if you focused on one person. But no, that's why there is wisdom in Christianity. That's why the church is depicted as the bride of Christ, right? You know, because the experience of two people in love is like the soul and the body. I remember that I was Manly Hall's designated substitute lecturer, and so sometimes it was weird because he'd have a title that he was going to be lecturing on, and then he would say, "I can't make it. I'm not up to it. Send the boy." And then I'd look at the title and be like, "Oh man." Like one of them was Marriage in the New World Order. And I was like, whoa, what do you mean by New World Order? You know, like that sounds kind of fascist. And so I approached him. I remember sitting in his garden, and I said, I needed to talk to you about this thing. I'm supposed to lecture on Sunday. And, you know, what do you mean by New World Order exactly? And so he explained to me that he thought that that the way that two people in love act with each other and the way they care for each other should be the model for government. That it should come from that place of deep compassion and love, and only then would we have a civilized society. And because when you have that kind of love, you even put the other person over yourself. You're so concerned that they get the best, that they are protected, that they're, you know, imagine, it's hard to imagine, especially where we are right now, but imagine a society like that, where the president and Congress and everybody is functioning from this, what's best for everybody? Like, what makes everybody flourish? How do we make sure that the young people all grow into the best that they can be? And, you know, it was a beautiful concept.
It sounds damn near utopian, you know, like it seems like it would function really well that way. I could imagine anyway.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's just really unfortunate that exactly how politics are going today. I can't even look at it. It makes me fucking sick to my stomach. I want nothing to do with it. You know, you kind of been seeing the writing on the wall with all this crazy shit anyway. And I'm like, all right, well, it's all finally coming to fruition. And I guess, you know, this is what we asked for. But you know, just stepping out of that for a second, I do want to ask you, you know, because I know that, you know, you have been receiving some kind of guidance from your late wife. And just out of curiosity, have you tried any divinatory tools in order to communicate? Maybe pendulums or tarot cards or anything like that?
Yeah, I have actually. I've tried I've tried tarot. I've tried the I Ching, various things, but she basically laughs at me. Her what I'm getting from her is that she wants direct communication, and it's hard because my grief is dense, and it makes it hard to get in there. So I think that's why she comes in through my dreams, and she's been very effective in doing that. When I'm in a really low point, she will make an appearance in a dream, and I can always tell because it's like it's not in a place. It's like filled. It's just light, and then there's this experience that happens in this light, and there's a transmission of this wisdom. And then the other thing is that it's so much simpler. There are moments when the communication is so simple. It's just I know it's her. I can even when I'm writing, for example, like she had a wicked wit. I mean, just you can always tell it's her because there's a double, triple pun. Like she always did that in her song lyrics and in her writing. And just to give you a kind of a lame example, but in one of her songs called "Welcome to America," she sings, "We got TVs, both kinds." Right. And that's her sense of humor. So I was working on something and I'm writing and when you write the words just drop in your head. So you don't know if it's you or it's somebody else or like what's happening. And all of a sudden this line drops in my head that made me laugh, and it had a triple pun in it. And I was just, that's Tamara. Like I know Tamara's sense of humor when I see it. And sometimes it's even like if I'm not trying, like I'm just I will just talk to her sometimes because habitual, like, like Tamara, I don't know what to do about this. Like, and then it's like she's right there and she says something and I have to fight. I was raised by people who were atheists. They were war refugees. They were all fucked up and they never believed in anything supernatural or religious. And they built into me this reflex. So, when I get these simple communications that are very probably her, because when it happens with other people, it's like that. It's super simple. It's just you hear her,
Right.
and she's saying things, and it's quite obvious that it's her. But for me, because I have that doubt, like when it happens, there's a part of me that snaps in and says, hey, wait a minute. How do you know that's not your unconscious? And then, by the way, going back to your statement about demons and how do you know which voice it is and who's talking and all that. Tamara, before she left, had a very interesting viewpoint on that. She was being interviewed by somebody who asked her that very question, and she said, "I'm not going to do it justice, but basically what she said was this: Look, I don't care if it's your grandma, or it's like a hidden master, or it's a freaking demon." Or it's your own unconscious. The question is the advice good?
That's a good point. Yeah, it's usually a good point. And a lot of times I feel like anytime I get any kind of signs from anybody on the other side that I'm maybe seeking a little guidance from, the way in which it's revealed to me is not far off from what I could imagine them saying anyway.
That's right.
It's like, their spirit, their heart, and, their exactly all the things that would make them laugh. And maybe just like how you were talking about. And so I rarely ever feel like I'm being deceived by some kind of evil entity, if ever,
Right.
I never really get that sense. Of course, I didn't grow up in religion, so I don't really
Right.
have that thing really holding me back.
I personally think, I know Tamara felt this way too, like she felt bad for people who believe that. Like she would always say, God, that's so sad. Like to go through life thinking that there's something out there that's in your head trying to condemn you to do something terrible. Like it's, we do that, like as human beings. But then we split it off and say, no, that wasn't me. This was a demonic command or something. And I think there are ways that you can look at it. And I mean, for instance, in the book that we were working on, the people who put that book together, the Whites, they said, be careful of urgency, right? Like they thought that there were spirits. essentially what they said was that they didn't believe in demons. They said, look, if a person's rotten, they don't get better just because they pop out of the body. Like a person who's a dick in real life is going to be a dick when they're a spirit. And they may try to fuck up something because they're just dicks and they don't want something good to happen. They're jealous or whatever.
Just because you're dead don't mean you know everything, kind of thing.
Right, exactly. And so they said that the key is urgency, right? Like if it's real urgent, and also like ego, like if it inflames your ego, like it's like you got to do this right now because you're the only one, and you know the whole world of it, like that stuff, like run the other way.
Yeah, you're the
Like,
savior. You have to do this kind of thing.
Exactly, and it's like the wholesomeness of it is how you know it. The affectionate quality of it, the calmness of it, the way that it guides you to doing something that you can see makes sense, something that you can see is compassionate and will have a good impact on the situation that you're concerned about. That is the way you can tell, they said, what the source of it might be. And so if it's a mischievous spirit, it's going to try to convince you how important you are. It's going to try to scare you. It's going to try and get you to look at other people with fear or with competition or with hatred. And if it's something that's coming from a higher place, it's going to be marked by love.
Yeah, well, those mischievous spirits are always trying to get me to go off my diet and eat more pizza. You know, that's one thing. That's a bone that I got to pick with them. You know, but
I think that's true. I think there's people who die addicted to things, and they want to be around and encourage those addictions, and
Yep.
It's in all the traditions, you know.
Oh yeah. Well, you know what? Speaking of the signs that you were kind of talking about, you know, I almost go to crazy odds with this, to where I want to pay attention to every single possible sign that is around me. I'm almost like schizophrenic with it. And and because I really love the idea of this thing called synchromysticism, where you're essentially looking around for all the synchronicities, and you know it'll either confirm or deny or whatever it is that may be on your mind, kind of thing. You know, it's very to the individual's perception. And I've noticed that ever since I really started paying attention to everything around me, I almost feel like there is some kind of like it's almost like I feel like I'm in union with the rest of reality in a weird way. Like I feel like that is how the universe or the source or consciousness or whatever it is communicating with me, because it almost feels like it can never be super direct, but it's direct. It's subtly direct, if that makes any sense. And I feel like, you know, if you're really trying to get any kind of answers from the universe or anything like that, you know, the way to be able to go about perceiving that is to start paying attention and to start becoming more aware. And, you know, obviously people have talked about meditation practices and just mindfulness and stuff like that. And that is how you can get more in touch with that. But do you ever find yourself doing that at all? Like, do you almost feel like you're looking for the synchronicities for any kind of confirmation?
I was taught by a Taos Pueblo shaman that when you're in doubt, you can consult anything in nature. He would tell me, you can, you know, go out in the garden and talk to the plants, talk to the bird, you will be guided. And I think the reason that works is because of something that the Roman philosopher Plotinus said, and I think it explains astrology as well. Everything breathes together, right?
That makes
So
sense.
we're all connected. We're all reflecting the same moment. And it also reminds me of the jewel net of Indra in Huayan Buddhism, which is the idea that every being is a jewel in this massive net that's the universe. And every jewel reflects all the other jewels.
Yeah, I don't believe in coincidence at all, and I feel like the more we've talked about it, I've learned to just trust and respect maybe some of the signs that I get, because I feel like nothing is random. I don't believe in randomness, to be honest. Like, and maybe that's crazy. Maybe like I look too far into it, but I feel like I'm in, a higher level of understanding whenever I don't look at something as if it is just random.
Well, again, if everything's breathing together, everything's reflecting everything, then meaning is everywhere. And
Yes.
and another thing about the jewel net of Indra that's really beautiful is the last step of that is, so all the jewels reflect all the jewels, and then the next step they give you is, except there are no jewels. There's only reflections, right?
Oh,
So that takes you into the sort of immaterial side of it. And so also, if you believe that consciousness underlies everything, which is one of the teachings of these two people, that everything in the material world is created by a consciousness. Everything, even unconscious things, are created by a consciousness. And it's interesting because this has been called in the West the pathetic fallacy, right? Like, because the indigenous people believe this also. And so they dismissed it as being wrong and pathetic. But actually, I think that they're wrong and pathetic, and that this meaning that is in everything, it's so profound. I mean, I've saw, when you live with somebody like Tamara, you see the magic, like the way that, for example, so here's a great little Tamara story. So when we were working on a film with Edward James Olmos about Obama's terrible deportation policy, and so he came to we had a recording studio in our house, like a small but good one, and we decided, well, let's just record it here. So he came over to record the narration for the film here. When he came up the driveway, he saw Tamara crawling around on her hands and knees in the driveway between the cars wearing white gloves. And he was like, girl, what are you doing? I mean, it was pretty suspicious looking. And she said, I'm searching for a baby mockingbird that fell out of the nest. Do you want to help me? And so there was Edward James Olmos on his hands and knees trying to find a baby mockingbird. So they found the baby mockingbird, and she was wearing the white gloves so that the smell of a human being wouldn't be on the bird. She picked it up, she put it back in the nest. Well, that bird remembered her, and that bird would come around. It had no fear of her.
really?
And it was so awesome to see this bird like reacting to her like a friend. And so she would teach the bird whistles, like all these weird whistles and melodies and bits of songs and stuff, and the bird would learn them, and then would pass that on to the next generation of mockingbird.
Whoa.
Now, after she passed, there was a new mockingbird that showed up for spring, and I was listening for one of her songs, and I heard the bird do a whistle that was one of Tamara's whistles. And I thought, okay, cool. So I guess this must be a relative of that bird from back then. And then we had a huge storm. It was one of the worst storms I've ever seen here. The wind was unbelievable. And I was kind of afraid for the bird. So when the storm passes, I'm working out downstairs, and it was beautiful. The garden, like the droplets from the rain were everywhere. And I didn't hear the bird. And I was a little concerned. And then I saw this movement, and it was the mockingbird had found a mate somehow. And they were dancing around like Astaire and Ginger Rogers under these rain droplets. It was so fucking cute. And I said out loud, hey, Tamara, we're going to have baby birds. And so the next day, I get a note from the person who sent me the Mildred comment. And she says, this is a message from Tamara, baby birds chirping.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my God,
Now
dude.
look at the magic in that's just one little thing, one little thread, who knew that bird, and then it's like, that's the magic that can happen. And for her, that kind of magic happened all the time because she loved nature. Like, another amazing thing that happened with her was that we had this one plant in the garden that had been there for over 20 years, and a friend had planted it, and we didn't know if it would ever bloom or what the hell it was. And she just took care of it, and she was, as she was with all plants, she'd come and check it out and touch its leaf and go, "You're looking good." And after she passed, when I finished the book and I sent it to the publisher, so it was the final version of it. On the very day that I sent it to the publisher, that plant bloomed. And it was these two beautiful white hibiscus flowers. And I mean, after 20 freaking years, the thing bloomed on that day.
It's all magic, man. It's all magic. I just see that,
exactly.
Like, randomness. People would look at that maybe as randomness or coincidence. Now, I feel like just by calling something random or just by calling something a coincidence, you're taking away the magic that is of the world. Like, I'm not saying that people have to sit inside of a pentagram and light a bunch of candles and maybe, you know, sprinkle a little salt around in order to talk to spirits or anything. But you can easily just communicate with your reality in these strange ways. Why would you not want to?
Exactly. That's how I feel too. And I think that this is our heritage going back to indigenous cultures, that they did have that relationship. The shaman and the tribe had that kind of relationship with nature. And I think, again, that this is taken from us. And then all the necessities for rituals. I mean, isn't that just an adaptation of the church you have to go to this place and you have to be indoors, and the priest has to say these words. And it's like something that Ralph Waldo Emerson said that always stuck with me, which he said eloquently, and I won't. But what he said was, why do we have to have the revelations of the divine of the past? Like, why can't I have a direct revelation of the divine right now?
Yes. I totally agree with that. And, you know, especially nowadays, you'll maybe hear that somebody's a psychic or a prophet or anything like that. And it's just so easily thrown out the window for people who may think that it is, you know, I don't know, dragging what they believe through the mud. But I'm like, isn't that how we got here in the first place with all these different prophecies and all these perceptions of God and all this kind of stuff? Why did we stop that? You know, it's so crazy to me that that just came to a halt and nobody's allowed to perceive anything from God or from angels or anything like that. And if you do, it's heretical. Like, it doesn't make any sense.
It's power. It's all about power. And the reason it stopped is because they were killed, you know, like they killed as many of them as they could. And they especially disempowered women and women who were the core of human spirituality. Were suddenly cast in this role of evil, and they're dangerous and they're stupid, and it's
because
when you do that, you completely throw the world out of whack, right? I mean,
well, the women could perceive it better than the men could.
Exactly, and so then you have these witch trials, and you've got this, you know, you have people who are what they call cunning women, who are talented healers using herbs, the kind of people that Paracelsus went and studied from. And those people are suddenly considered to be satanic because they're not part of the church, and so they're persecuted. And this kind of thinking plays into politics. It plays into the dynamics of the family, and it creates this kind of for example, I often talk about this. I've never had people who don't recognize it. The sickness of the American family, right? Like if you have a family where the man is patriarchal and he's just riding on the women in the family, and the women do their best. They try to really fulfill the best they can, you know, their place in the society. How many of these people? I always want to say raise hands. Like, how many people know like an older man who did this to his wife? And now, at the end of life, the old man starts to get weak. He starts to have doubt. He starts to feel vulnerable. And man, she turns on him. Like a lifetime of anger turns on. And it's like, you son of a bitch. You know, now you want compassion from me? And it's like, that's like the heart of the family these days. And I think part of the reason for that is because those men, it's easier almost in a way, you know, if you hate your family and you hate your wife and you hate your job, like you don't mind dying. You don't feel loss. You don't feel that sense of, my God, what would happen to me if I ever lost this person that I love so much? You know, I remember even with all my spiritual teachings, I was very aware of impermanence. And I was always like, God, one day, you know, either I'm going to be without Tamara or Tamara's going to be without me. I mean, from the very beginning when we got together, she had briefly been apprenticed as a makeup artist, and her specialty was like wounds and things like that. And so our first Halloween together, we went as a suicide pact. And she did slash wrists on herself and a slash throat on me. And we showed up at this party, and my friends sat us down. And they were like, okay, we're worried about you guys. And then we used to talk when we were in music, and there was a couple times where we were offered fame. Like literally, we were told, Tamara was told, she was the leader of the band, if you give me 3 years, I will make you world famous. And so, you know, she said, what do I have to do? And so she didn't want to do it when she found out what she had to do. She was like, that's going to take all the fun out of music. That's going to fuck up my relationship. Like, forget it.
Sacrifice,
I don't want to
right?
be famous.
It's some kind of sacrifice.
Well, it's the sacrifice of your individuality. You have to present yourself the same way over and over again, do the same songs, be the same person, keep the same flavor. And she was somebody that, you know, one year she wanted to sound like this, and the next year she wanted to be completely different. She didn't have any interest in being frozen in this particular thing that people liked. And so when you do that, you get into this kind of I call it like being time bound, right? Like you belong to a certain time and place, and it's powerful, and people love you, but you stop kind of changing. You stop trying new things. You feel like this is what you are. And she wanted to reinvent herself constantly. But when we talked about it later in life, you know, we'd be like, do you have any regrets about it? And we decided the only regret we had was that, well, maybe like if we had been famous, we could have been on a plane together and like died like together on the plane. Like, you know,
Yep.
like, so we were very concerned about being apart, in short. And because we felt that sense of, I just love being with you. I love life with you, and I don't want to be without you. Then it happened. And so I'm the one now who's living here without her and feeling that absence. And it is super painful. It's beautiful in a way. It's joyous even in a way, because all the beautiful memories. And when I'm in the deep agony of the longing for her, it hurts, but it's also beautiful.
It's poetic.
And so most people don't want that experience. Like, it's better to hate your wife and hate your kids and hate your job and be like, oh, thank God I'm going to die now. I fucking hated living. It's hard to love life.
Yeah.
Because then the impermanence comes right at you. And it can be, we'd be talking about a cat or a dog too, you know, like people usually experience that with their pets, where it's, I just adore this animal, and then you lose that animal, and then it just breaks your heart.
Oh.
Impermanence is painful.
It's the worst.
So I think that this is why so many people live these hateful lives. They anesthetize themselves, and they don't experience the magic of life because it's too painful to lose that when you have experienced it.
Build up a barrier to prevent that kind of thing from happening. And maybe
Exactly.
it's probably, you know, maybe they had lost something and they never want to feel that again. And, you know, of course, you know, usually the first thing that you lose, maybe, I don't know, I can't say usually, at least in my case, the first thing I ever lost was one of my dogs. And that was like my best friend growing up. I wanted to be around him 24/7. And whenever he died, you know, a piece of you dies with that. You know, there's almost a little memory that dies with that too. And it's so strange too, because I've had countless amounts of dreams that I see him and I'm shocked. I'm like, oh my, and I'm not aware that I'm in a dream, but I'm like, oh my God, I thought you were dead. how, and then he's like communicating with me, which I don't find weird in the dream for some reason.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, we don't die. And I always remember these things. And I'm like, oh man, that was a weird dream. How cool would that be? You know, because you're taught to kind of just.
Well, let me talk to you about that.
Yeah,
as
go
a matter
ahead.
of fact, because it's in the book, The Unobstructed Way, that the whites were actually talking about that. So this is their viewpoint about the meaning of life, essentially. So all life is made up of quality of consciousness. Your quality of consciousness in the material world is what defines what kind of being you are. So a tree has a tree quality of life. A human being has a human being quality of life, etc.
Okay.
And then you also have quantity of consciousness. So in that quality, your job over lifetimes, more than one life, is to get as much consciousness in that quality as you can. That's why, for example, with trees, you can sometimes see a tree that is just so fucking magnificent, so beautiful, so much life that is associated with that tree that lives in it and around it. And that tree gives you this sense of divine presence almost.
Yep.
Well, that's a tree that is almost done being trees. It's a tree that has gotten so much quantity of consciousness that it's going to step up to a new quality next time because it needs a new form so that it can acquire more consciousness.
Yes.
And they said that this is that every creature that develops reason and will is an individual that is immortal. So, any dog that has figured out how to get treats out of its owner is an immortal, is an evolving being in that quality of consciousness.
Oh.
And will someday graduate to a higher level of consciousness. And so will we, when we acquire the most human consciousness that we can. And so our pets are living, and they are immortal, and they do have a destiny. And so they can, I've had a cat that reincarnated. The cat basically just picked up exactly where she left off. She looks almost the same. She started playing. I mean, I got her all these toys, and there was this one toy that I neglected that belonged to the cat that she was the reincarnation of. And she ignored all the toys and went and found that toy where it had fallen under something and only played with the toy that she loved before. And she had same behaviors, same taste in food, looks the same. And she loved me. She was like all the cats loved Tamara because Tamara, amazing with animals. But this one cat was like, I love you, Ronnie. and she came back and was exactly the same way. Tamara was still here when she came back, and she was just like, yeah, Tamara's okay, but Ronnie, you're my man, And so I figured that cat just came right back. She was like, I'm not done with you. And then it turned out that Tamara passed, and I was like, man, I'm glad this cat is here. Like this, it's almost like she knew, and she was like, you're going to need me, so I'm coming right back for you. Now, it sounds like that your dog was like, I'm over on the other side waiting for you, and I'm going to keep visiting you and telling you, I'm over here. This shit's real. Like I'm going to help you on your spiritual path.
Yeah. And I don't know if you've ever thought, I'm sure you've thought about this before, but, with the afterlife, wherever our consciousness, our spirit, our soul, whatever you want to call it, wherever that goes, is that the same place as where we go in our dreams? A place, I mean, I don't even mean material place. I don't even know what a place would be on that side, but is it all the same?
Yeah, they talk about that. So what they say is that it is one universe. They say that this side of it where we live is what they called obstructed. So this is the obstructed universe. We are obstructed by our bodies. We're obstructed by the 3 dimensions. We're obstructed by materiality. Our bodies are made of aggregates that we gather together, and then all these different pieces are working together. And so the other place is unobstructed. It's the same universe. And the example that they used, which is really beautiful, is, when you go camping, and let's say it's a cloudy night, and you can't see the stars, maybe it's the new moon, it's really dark. It's claustrophobic. Like it's just dark
Yep.
and you can't see very far. And they're like, that's the obstructed universe. Then the sun comes up. Now you can see the purple light on the mountains miles away. You can see vast amounts of trees in all the different colors of green, and you can see flowers and the blue sky and the puffy clouds. And it's all in this vivid color. That's the unobstructed universe. So it's the same place, but we experience only this little bit of it because we're in the density of our bodies.
Right.
And when you get out of the body, you have this timeless consciousness that is not tied down to place or time. And so you experience the whole big picture of it. And so it's freedom, you know. And I actually had an NDE once where I felt it. Like I didn't get to see it really, but I did look back on where in a sense I thought my life had been, and it seemed like really like two-dimensional and colorless. And I was like, man, how did that ever hold my attention? You know, like really, like that is where everything was so important to me.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was rising out of it, I felt the only thing I can compare it to is like if you were covered in mud your whole life, and then suddenly somebody like took a hose and they washed all the mud off you, and your skin was breathing, and you were just like, oh wow, you know, like the freedom, you know, is what it felt like to me. And I even had that classic thing they talk about. You know, I felt a tug right here. I didn't have a right here, but that's what it felt like, and I was boom back in the body. And so I did get a glimpse of it.
Yeah, and I don't
the
know
freedom
how people
was amazing.
I don't know how people dismiss near-death experiences. Like we are obsessed with reading all of the near-death experiences and can't get enough of them because they're so extravagant. You know, I mean, all the details. I mean, the people that are trying to express what emotions were running through and, you know, what gnosis they had at that moment. And it's, you know, words can't do it justice. I mean, it is an experience over any words that you can ever put to it.
Yeah, that's it also addresses something you were asking about earlier. It's part of the thing is that it all filters through our subconscious. So we symbolize it. That's what I meant when I said when Tamara like kind of got on top of me and fused with me, and I saw a glimpse of her hair, I saw a glimpse of her shoulder. I think that was my subconscious furnishing those visuals because that's what my subconscious went. This is Tamara, and this is what we see when Tamara's on top of us.
Started painting the picture.
Yeah, and so when you're dealing with the unobstructed, with this infinite. And you have to bring it into the finite words and imagery of the obstructed universe. It is reduced. And so like one of the examples that they gave was in dealing with mediumship. They said how people are often upset because they go to a medium, they want to talk to somebody, and maybe it's their father, and they always call their father dad, but the medium calls father pop or something like that, and they think, oh God, well that's not my dad. But the thing is that the problem is, how do you get through the subconscious of the medium and get the right word? You know, that's what's so amazing about the communications coming through from Tamara to get Mildred through. Because it's going to have to go through the filter of what the medium thinks of as father. So if the medium didn't think of father as dad, it's going to be really hard to get the word dad through that medium.
Almost as if she had to send that message through that specific person in order to have that message perfectly relayed to you.
Right. Or that she found a way, you know, the way to get the precision in the communication that was overpowering, that made the person deliver the right word, which is something that Betty supposedly was able to do. Because when Betty came back, it's kind of a funny story. Like when she died, Stuart, unlike me, you know, he was this guy used to safaris, and he'd been studying this stuff for 20 years. He did not go into a deep grief. He knew she was there, but he didn't want to do any kind of mediumship because he felt like, as he said, one, he thought it was rude. He was like, well, I know this stuff's real. Like, why would I bother her and be like, oh, honey, please show me that it's, like, and on another level, he did admit, I was just kind of afraid that if it was a bad session, that it might shake me up a little bit. I might be like, well, whoa, what happened? So he was like, better not to have anything. I'm good. Like, I know she's with me. I can feel it.
Yeah.
So then they went to the woman who had helped to teach her to be a medium. And he had been invited to go visit all his friends. And so he didn't want to stay in this beautiful house they had, which was now empty. She was this wonderful, funny woman. There was no laughter anymore. And then all these exotic plants that she brought from all over the world just all started dying when she died. And even though he hired the best horticulturists money could buy, no one could save the plants. It's like they were like, Betty's gone, see ya. And so he didn't want to see the garden die. And so he started to go stay with all these friends around America. This was just before Pearl Harbor happened. And the last person he went to see was Joan, which was this woman who trained her as a medium. And Joan said to him, of course, well, do you want to do a session? And he said, yes, but not Betty, okay? Like, let's talk to your spirit guide. I don't want to, let's not go get Betty. And she was like, no problem, no Betty. She goes under, and of course, Betty comes right in, right? And the first thing she does is she calls him by this nickname that she never used in front of anybody else, which was Stoot. And his name was Stuart. And so I think that that's where Tamara got the idea for Mildred, a nickname that wasn't used in front of anybody else.
Oh, man.
And so then she spent, according to Stuart, 2.5 hours of details, like every single detail was accurate about their marriage, about their lives together, things that were super personal. And she even went into embarrassing shit, which I guess was sexuality, because he got all like, oh my God, don't talk about that. Joan's going to remember. And she was like, no, she's not going to remember. And he said there wasn't one mistake in 2.5 hours.
Unreal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, your wife knowing all of that, yeah, it is interesting that you would be able to take, I mean, they say that, whenever you die, you can't take anything with you. Of course, they're talking about materialistic possessions and other people and stuff like that. But I mean, if you are still you on the other side, then all of the information that you have gathered would still be with you, right? Or is that more?
Well, that's a question I always had. In Buddhism, they teach you that something survives, but it's not the personal you. And a lot of that is in esoteric teachings as well. They will say that you survive, but it's like, it's the soul that created Tamara survives, but Tamara does not survive because Tamara was a material being and such. But I can tell you a story about Betty that illustrates it pretty well, that's not the case, apparently.
Okay. Yes.
Which is, so in that first reading with Joan, Betty said to Stuart, and by the way, pay back Joan for the red lacquer box. And he was like, what are you talking about? And Joan will know. So after Joan comes out of trance, he says, hey, what's the story on this red lacquer box? And she goes, oh my God. She's like, really? She's like, so that was Betty? And she tells this story about how she was out shopping and she gets on this bus that's going the wrong way, and she's like compelled to go on this bus. And then she goes to the store that she has no reason to go to, but she's compelled to go to the store. And there she sees a red lacquer carved Chinese box, and she's got to have it. And they tell her, no, this is a sample, and it's the last one, and we can't sell it to you. And she's frantic. She's like, no, there's got to be one back there. Go look. I need to have this box. And so he goes back and he finds one. There was a misplaced one. So she buys it. She gets back on the bus going home, and she's like, what the fuck did I buy this for? She's like, I already have lacquer boxes. I don't even have room for this. And she's like, I must be going crazy. So Stuart asks Betty, what's the story here? I'll pay her back, but why did you do this? And she says, it's a present for my little sister Millicent. She says, it's the carving that matters. So Stuart takes the box to Millicent, and he says, "Did you ever talk to Betty about a red lacquer box?" And Millicent says, "Well, as a matter of fact, yes. We were in Chinatown in San Francisco, and I saw one, and I really loved it, but it was so expensive, and I thought, no, I don't think I can afford it." And I wrote Betty 3 times saying, "Hey, I didn't change my mind. Could you pick it up for me, and I'll pay you back?" But she never responded. So then he says, "Okay, well, she said it's the carving." So Millicent looks at the carving, which is of swallow birds, and she starts crying. And Stuart says, "Why are you crying?" And she says, "Because every spring, Betty would help me climb up into a tree so we could watch baby swallows hatching."
Oh,
Now, that's memory. That's
yeah.
detailed memory. Not only did she
100%.
remember Millicent, she remembered that Millicent wanted a red lacquer box, and she had so much going on that she could figure out, let's get one with swallows on it so it has a childhood message for my sister. This is because the consciousness is unobstructed on the other side, right?
Right.
So it's actually clearer than it is here.
That does make a lot of sense. And yeah, the idea that, parts of you, if not all of whatever you consider you, to me, it makes sense that that would come to the other side, at least a percentage of it, because if that wasn't coming, then how is it that people always talk about divine judgment whenever they die, whether it's judgment from God or themselves or whatever the case may be? If you don't
Yeah.
get to bring any of that, what is there to judge in the first place?
That's right. And in the Unobstructed Universe books, what they say is there is no hell, there's no divine judgment. That what hell and divine judgment are symbols for is the remorse that a soul feels when it sees what it did, and also what it didn't do, right? Like, so according to them, we all come into the world to do something specific, to do specific things, and we bring specific skills with us. But the way society works, often we're derailed from what we intended to do. We forget about our mission completely. We may never even develop our skills or know that we have them. And so when you do that, things don't get done that were supposed to get done, and the world gets that much shittier for the next person. And when you die and you realize that you went through all that trouble to incarnate, to make a body, to learn, to live, and you didn't do the thing that you went there to do, that the remorse is very intense. And then there are also those who kind of, or for example, I think this is very interesting. They said that people worry about spirit possession, right? And that feeds into the idea of the demon that speaks, or there might be an evil spirit talking to you. And they said that that is far less common and far less dangerous than what they call possession by the living.
Oh,
And possession by the living is what happens when your family or your boyfriend or girlfriend or your teachers or your job or your religion, when it possesses you, where it tells you, this is how I think you should be, and you have to live this way. And because of that, you never find out who you are or why you came here,
because of the traditional moral values and whatnot.
or all sorts of things like that. There's just time parents are like, he's got to be a doctor. That's what I want. And maybe that person wasn't meant to be a doctor. So I think a good example of that actually is Tamara and I, because when I met Tamara, I was a criminal. I mean, I had a band. It was a nihilist, racist band, super violent. We had, my guest list used to say anyone wearing the colors of the devil's henchmen or the Satan's slaves, and we had bikers for security. And I was myself a very violent person, a liar, a thief, and I just wanted to die young, like I didn't believe in love. I had different girls for different nights who would bring me drugs and liquor and money, and that's how I survived. And Tamara was somebody who'd been raised by people who told her she was stupid and worthless, and she was, just never going to amount to anything. That the most she could hope to be is a waitress, which is okay. I mean, that's a gig. But and when I met her, she was very insecure, and so what happened, right? Well, I turned out to be Manly Hall's assistant and this scholar, and she turned out to be this incredible force of nature, this like brilliant, author and a leader in the Riot Girl movement, and I mean, making films and just amazing, intelligent, more intelligent than me, and I was the one that was the scholar. Well, we never would have known that, right? Had we not met, very likely I would have died young and lived a horrible life and done horrible things to people, which I did, and she would have thought of herself as some dumb bitch who did her best, and we never would have turned into what we turned into, and we wouldn't have influenced the people that we influenced. And as you saw in her celebration of life, she had tremendous influence on people.
Oh,
So
man.
all of them wouldn't have had her to give them the opportunity to discover who they were.
Man, that video was like 2 or 3 hours long. It was like insane how many people were almost giving her flowers. I'm almost getting kind of jealous at the point where I'm listening to it. I'm like, man, I hope somebody can, gather around a couple of people to make a 10-minute video of me whenever I die, let alone hours worth. That was incredible.
Yeah, well, she used to say that her goal in life was to create safe spaces where people could become themselves, and I think that's the key. But so now imagine, if we came down with the skills and the love that we had, this like magical lifelong love, where we were, we didn't. Like usually people fall in love and then it kind of quiets down. It's still beautiful, but it's kind of quieter. We were infatuated with each other all our lives. Like everybody that we knew were always talking about, damn, you guys act like you just met. Like we were falling in love like every day in a weird way. And one long conversation just never ended. And we just had so much fun with each other. And so none of that would have happened. Like I was a drag to be around before I met her. I didn't even think women were worthwhile in a sense. I was just this. It's why these days when I look at this whole movement that is trying to teach young men to treat women like shit, I'm like, hey, I've been there. Like, let me tell you, that ain't as good as this. Like love, man, that's where it's at. Like I was the alpha male, and you guys who think you're alpha males because you work out and you treat women like shit, man, we would have eaten you up and spit you out in the world I came from. Like you're a joke.
Yep.
And women are where it's at, and so Tamara emerged in my life. I mean, when I met her, I was the protector and I was a smart one, and then slowly over time, she showed me, and then she became a fucking martial artist, right? So she was a better protector than I ever was, and then she showed me that she was smarter than me. That her uncommon common sense alone, but just brilliant girl, and that's the joy. Like when you get together, we were just kids. We were like 19 when we met, and you get together and then you grow together, and it's like this amazing miracle. You're like, whoa, I didn't know you could do that. Like it's so cool. And helping each other to do that, to become more and more creative and more brilliant, and to work on things together is just so joyous. And when I see people selling this mythology that, well, women are only good for one thing and they're barely good for that, and men are the whole story. And it's like, there's a lot of guys like me who experienced that, and we know both sides of it. And the truth is that love is the best thing in this universe. It's the strongest magic in the universe. It's just the best. But we never would have had those experiences had we not met. She came up to me for protection in a club she never should have been in, after being told by the club owner, do not talk to that guy when he saw her looking at me. He's dangerous. And yet she felt that I was the one that was going to protect her, and I was. And she really saved me. Like I was asked to rescue her, but she rescued me. And so if we had not had that experience, we would have died and been like, oh, fuck. Like, you mean we could have done all these things? We could have known Manly Hall. We could have, and instead I was hanging around, doing horrible shit because I was an idiot. That's hell. That's judgment, right? And then, according to these books, when that happens, you're just like, okay, I got to get back down there. I got to fix what I screwed up.
You think that's what it is? Do you think that's why we always come back, is because of maybe regrets or things that we missed out on or what could have happened that never did? Like, that's what draws us
I think
back
that's
into
a
it?
big, like they said that is the equivalent of lust in our world.
Oh.
Like, it's that strong. And then for people who have kind of graduated to a higher level, it's more the bodhisattva thing, where it's like, I have developed these skills, and so I'm going to go down there and try and help, because my God, look at the suffering down there. And I have all this power that I've developed in getting this quantity of consciousness, right? So I'm going to take this quantity of consciousness down into the world. But I can tell you, like, from my point of view, and maybe I'll feel different when I'm over there, because, I mean, I got things to do, and I want to be alive, and I'm not against having another relationship or something like that. I think she'd want me to, but at the same time, I can't fucking wait. Like, I'm not scared of anything, man. I'm like, kill me, motherfucker. That means I get to be with her,
Yeah.
but I could imagine being like, let's do it again. Like, as long as we can be together, like, let's go do it again. Because that was a blast. Like, the magic was amazing. Let's see if we can do it even better.
Why would you not want to?
Exactly. It's like creating a poem or a masterpiece. It's hard to describe, man. Like, when you have a relationship like that, sure, it's just in the material world. It's this impermanent thing amongst billions of lives, but there's something, it's like a poem. It's like this, like creating a perfect poem or a perfect song. And that's why I can sit here and cry, because I'm longing for her physical presence. But at the same time, I'm glowing, because I'm just going, damn, that was amazing. Like, wow, how did we do that? Like, how do we create this amazing experience,
Oh, yeah.
And I think I'm still here because I'm supposed to transmit that. I'm supposed to. It's happened already in some cases with people that we knew who, like, it transformed their relationships. Like seeing and hearing about us wakes people up to the possibilities of love. And I've had, like, podcast interviews with, like, the worst kind of red pill guys and stuff, and black pill guys, and some of them cry, like, at the end of it, and they're like telling me about the girl that they fucked up the relationship, and they think it was their soulmate, and we've all got that in us, man. We all want that love, that great love, and we live in a world today where people have stopped believing in it. And for good reason, because, I mean, personally, after being in Riot Girl for years, I'm like, what the hell is going on with men? Like, Jesus. Like, men have to get their shit together, man. They treat women like shit. And then they bitch about how women act. It's like, well, you taught them, and
It's an easy trap to fall into, though. I'll say that. I mean, there's a lot of people that, maybe they don't believe in love, and so they're just like, all right, well, I'll just have a marriage or a relationship just like my parents had, or like my friend's parents had, and that's the best thing that could really happen. Maybe we'll have some kids, we'll get a house one day, and then they wake up one day and they're just like unfulfilled and not happy, and they go into that depression. And just like what you were saying, it's easier to hate, because giving into what you're missing out on is harder on the soul or on the person than admitting that they missed out on that.
yeah, I think so. And also the other thing about love is that it's, as is illustrated by Tamara and me, we I had completely did not believe in love, and she had just written 2 weeks before she met me in her journal, "There's no such thing as true love." And so love, it's like the Greeks used to say, Aphrodite makes a fool out of you. And we actually met on April Fool's Day, which is the feast of Aphrodite. And love gets you. Like, I remember standing next to her for the first time that night when I was standing with her to protect her as we went into this apartment building, and this feeling I felt standing next to her. And I was like, oh, fuck. I was like, I've never felt that. Like, this feels like where I belong. And I didn't want that. Like, I knew that was going to ruin everything. It was going to ruin my setup. It was going to ruin my band. And it did, because within 2 weeks, I was like, I didn't want to see the other girls. I didn't want to go to rehearsal. I was just like, where's Tamara? What's Tamara doing? Like, I want to be with Tamara. So, I mean, when it happens, it takes you, man. It's like, like, it isn't something that you go looking for. Like, I don't know. We didn't earn it. I mean, I don't think. I mean, I certainly didn't. I can't speak for her, but I didn't do anything that made it something I deserved. Like, love just came into my life and transformed it. And so, that makes it also difficult, I think, because if you try to go out and find it, you often get abused, and people use that against you, and especially today. So it's a very difficult thing. It's like this magic again that has to happen, and it's very easy to mistake it. To think you're falling in love, but it's really somebody who's love bombing you, or a narcissist or something, and people experience that, and then it embitters them, and it's hard to keep that hope alive. But I think at this point, it's gone way over to the opposite extreme, right? Like, now it's just considered completely a joke, and nobody believes in love, and many women are giving up on men altogether because of how nasty they are. And that, to me, that speaks to my responsibility to witness that something like this is possible, and that somebody who, like myself, who was a really good example, unfortunately, of a terrible man, could be transformed by love, and that this is real. Does it happen to you just because you hear about it? I don't know. But you know what? The weird thing is that there are people in my life who it happened to because they heard about it. And it's almost like until they believed that it was possible, it couldn't happen to them. And then when they believed it, it walked right into their lives. And it's a strange experience for me, because they come over and they remind me of us, and I'm very happy for them, but it hurts, man. Like, to be around them and to remember the way she looked at me, and to see them looking at each other like that, and it fucking hurts.
Yeah, yeah, I can imagine.
But I think that's why I'm here, is to witness a lot of these things, because I've been blessed to have a life where I've experienced a lot of things that most people don't believe in.
There's a lot of people out there that have some kind of experience or another, and it makes such an impression on them. It completely changes their lives. Maybe it is, maybe they see an alien or a UFO, or maybe, some religious event takes place in their life that they just can't ignore. Or maybe they go on a crazy DMT or acid trip, and I got the answers. I know that this is absolute, right? And I think really the real message behind a lot of those things, including, your connection with your wife and the love that y'all developed, the real fascination about all of that is that it's not just happening to one person. Of course, it is happening to the individual, but that individual is now going to share that, and it creates believers. It used to be so crazy to even believe in aliens, and now everybody does, because people are getting videos of orbs in the sky, or, people are not looking at meditation like it's too woo-woo, and you know what I mean? Like, all of these experiences people are sharing, and I think that is sort of that bleed over, and that's probably the main reason why that person had that experience in the first place, just so that they can share that message.
Exactly. And that's the mission, right? That's the mission that they came here to do, to experience that experience and then to share it with people so that they can accomplish their missions.
I mean, just the
And
fact that
that's
you were like basically an understudy to Manly P. Hall, and that wasn't even the highlight of your life. Like that speaks volumes, I think.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that's a good example too, because if you've read most of the stuff online about him or that absolutely awful biography of him, they make it out that his marriage was terrible and that his wife tortured him and that she totally just hustled him. And Tamara and I spent a lot of time around the halls. We were allowed to come over whenever we wanted. We had dinner with them all the time. They loved each other, and they were like, these are two 80-year-old plus people who were like puppy love on each other, and the way they would look at each other, and I'd never seen anything like it. I mean, it was so sweet. And yeah, she had a temper, and she would tell him off and even make him cry sometimes, but the things she was telling him were true, and I think that he really appreciated that, everybody worshiped him, and she had the balls to call him out. And she hugely changed our lives, because when I started lecturing in his place, everybody assumed that meant that I was like, the chosen one. And so I could have had a career doing these lectures and writing books and kind of following down the same path that he took. And Marie, his wife, took Tamara aside one day when we were over there, and she was like, "Girl, I got to talk to you." And she said, "Do not let him go down the path that Manly went down." She said, "Manly is addicted to the adoration of his fans, and his fans think that I'm a joke. They all treat me like dirt because they all think they deserve him more than I do. Do you want a life like that? Do you want him to live like that?" And Tamara came back and told me, and it just floored me, and no, we didn't. And sure enough, what was waiting in there was Tamara the riot girl, Tamara the front woman, like I became just a guitar player in her band. And it was beautiful. I loved it. It was so much cooler than being like the guru guy, like it was just great to see her like out there changing the lives of these girls, and all I had to do was play a riff. And I am so grateful to Marie for that. And then when I hear people talking about their terrible marriage and how he must not have been so wise because he allowed this woman to hustle him, and I'm like, you motherfuckers never sat for 5 minutes with those two. You don't know shit about it. I was there all the time. And like I saw the love. It was so cute. Like she'd get behind him and play with his curls, and just be like, "Oh, Manly," It was so cute. And so that they were an example to us of like this deep love. And they take us to museums sometimes. It's like we were their grandkids, and to hear them, like they'd be walking along in this museum talking about Hindu art and ancient Hindu art, and they knew everything about everything, and they'd just be like, "Oh, well," da, 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 da. And we were just standing there going, "Wow, like we want to be like that. We want to know all of that and talk about it and be so close to each other." And oh man, yeah, they were so amazing together.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately there are people out there that I've seen a lot where they're trying to drag the secret teachings for all ages through the mud or Manly through the mud, and I'm like, I don't really get that impression, because we very early on in this show's creation, we had you on the show, and if Manly was even halfway decent of an individual, it would reflect on you, and we thought very highly of you. We still do think very highly of you, and I think that may be somewhat, a reflection of Manly himself, and especially
Absolutely.
you're talking about the influence that he had on you, and the influence that you had on, even the love that you two bond. I don't see why anybody would try and drag that through the mud. Probably the religious folk, I could see that.
Right. Well, I think part of it is that, I mean, from a scholarly point of view, we have to remember that this guy was writing in the 20s. He did not have access to all the modern scholarship. So there are things in his books that are no longer thought accurate, but at the time when they were written, it was the best possible scholarship.
Oh yeah.
People forget that. They expect him to be up to date with the latest research that only came out 10 years ago. And then also I think that that biography did a lot of damage. The way that it focused on silly things like he ate too much, or he liked to sneak hamburgers, or how he would supposedly aggrandize himself. Now, I don't know. I wasn't around. I was there for his last 10 years, like seven years I was there. The guy that I knew for those 7 years was a fantastic, way better than me, like just a magical, deep, beautiful soul.
And that's another thing that I heard, and I always hear popping up in conspiracy circles, is that he was so deeply into the occult, which for some reason is just such a blasphemous thing in the first place. But
Right.
you know, according to some people, but
Yeah.
that he made up his own name because it was I can't remember. It was something like they wanted. He must have wanted to try and project what his occult name was, and that's why his name was Manly P for manly phallus. And I'm like, I mean, have you heard this one?
That's a new one for me. That's a good one.
Because
yeah, no,
you know,
that's
the occult
actually
is
his.
always obsessed with, you know, dicks and vaginas and obelisks and all
Right.
this other shit, right?
Well, I mean, that's the funny thing is that Marie's first husband used to when he had to go to the bathroom, he'd say, "Excuse me, I have to go to the manly pee hall," right? No, I don't think he would have chosen that name. That was his name. You know, his grandma was named Palmer, and his dad was Hall, and yeah, he wasn't like that. I don't. Now he was into. He told me, and Marie told us too, that he was into some pretty heavy occult stuff in the early days. He was young and he was exploring that stuff. And I remember Marie said when she met him that he lived in this Frank Lloyd Wright house that was really creepy, and he had black curtains. And she said he had what she called a dwarf manservant. And she said I moved in and I ripped down all those curtains, and it was a good German breakfast every morning. And so I know that he had kind of gone into some ceremonial stuff early on, but he told me that he regretted it, that he regretted talking about it, and that it was something that was kind of the glamour of it, you know, was in the glamour of Hollywood, which he was around in those early days, had kind of taken him out of himself a little bit. And he really, for instance, he told me that, well, one of the things was that when I became his screener, and Tamara was his favorite screener, he saw a lot of damaged people, and so did I. And he saw it for decades. He was like the last resort. And so every week he had letters and phone calls and visits from people who were like begging him to help them because they couldn't find help anywhere else. And the three things, now, one, I want you to know that everything caused that, okay? Like Christianity caused it. You know, there wasn't a single kind of religious path that wasn't capable of making somebody crazy. Mm-hmm. But the ones that really, really did it were ceremonial magic, Crowley, and spiritualism, right? And so when I was screening for him, I met people like this. I met people who, like, for example, they're doing a ceremonial magic ritual, and then they're closing the circle, and then they think, oh God, I didn't do that, so I never closed the circle. And then they become convinced that some kind of demonic entity is haunting them, and they don't know how to stop it, and they go see Manly Hall. In spiritualism, the same thing. They become mediumistic, and then they can't get rid of the spirit. They can't get the spirit to shut up. The spirit is in their dreams and invading their space. What do I do? And then Crowley, of course, was like all of it in one person because people miss a lot of his wit. Tamara used to say that you can't understand Aleister Crowley unless you have the understanding that he was a really funny queen, right? And so people take it all literally and super seriously, and they get themselves in trouble. And what he told me was that in 99% of these cases, it's psychological problems. He said he wished that he had taught that people should study some form of psychology before they begin to study any form of esoteric practice.
Oh yeah.
So that they can get a knowledge of how the psyche works.
Otherwise, you're going to spiral.
Yes, and you take people who already have issues for whatever reason, and then you take them and put them into ceremonial magic or Crowley or spiritualism, or for that matter, Christianity, and boom, it just explodes into this like complex or this obsession. And he had these cool like little cures, like it was amazing. I would ask him like, well, what do we do about this? And he'd have some, well, tell him to buy a red light bulb and a blue light bulb and put them in 2 lamps, and then to do the like he had these cool little like tricks, that would like psych them into being okay.
Wow.
And partially because he had so much legitimacy to these people that if he told them do this, they believed it. And he told me the belief was the important part, that they would be able to cure themselves. And also he always had me tell them, you need to study a quieter form of spiritual path. Like, why don't you get into Taoism? Why don't you get into Buddhism? Like, remind the Crowley people that he did yoga and that he studied Buddhism. Remind ceremonial magicians that they don't have to do the rituals and all this kind of stuff. They could be Freemasons if they like the rituals,
Right.
At least that way they've got friends around them, and it's not just them and their experience without any moderating presence.
It's structured, so
yes, exactly. And so, but he thought the best thing to do was to just let life and nature teach you. That he felt that, he said to me that life is the mystery school. Your own life will teach you what you need to know. And if you treat it that way, and this goes back to what you were saying earlier in our conversation about seeing signs everywhere, yes, that can be taken to an extreme. There's a condition in psychology called apophenia, which is like where people see like every single thing, like the billboard, like everything they see every minute is a sign from God,
right.
And it's like really out of control, and it fucks up their lives. But yet there are I could tell you stories, I won't go into it, but like people have seen like license plate stuff and like weird little things that seem ridiculous, but there were clearly messages reflecting things that Tamara had been sending, and the timing of them was just perfect for when they saw it. Well, I'll tell you one actually, because it's funny. So people saw a lot of dragonflies in the beginning when Tamara was coming around. Like the dragonflies would like herald her approaching presence. And sometimes like people would say, they'd see this big, huge dragonfly like dancing around them, and they would go, Tamara, and then the dragonfly would like hit them in the face,
Whoa.
right? And then they would hear something from Tamara. And so a good friend of mine, Tanya, she was on Facebook, and she was looking at Facebook Marketplace, and she saw these lapis lazuli winged dragonflies being sold by someone named Tamara. And Tamara spelled her name Tamra. That was her birth name. And this person also spelled it Tamra. That spelling is rather rare. So my friend was like, oh, wow. But then when she went back, they were gone. So she thought, oh, well, whatever. So she was over here like a week ago or something, and she told me about this. And I said, oh, Tamara loved lapis lazuli. That was her favorite stone. And she was like, oh, really? And she was like, let me check. Maybe they're back. Well, right as she's checking, the Tamara person put those dragonflies back for sale on Facebook Marketplace, like literally at the same time. And so Tanya went, okay, I'm buying this. So she buys it, and then the next day she's going to go get them. And as she's driving there, she sees this car, and the license plate says, no feet. And that was a message that Tamara had sent. She kept doing these jokes, like she'd send a message to me like, "I'd hold your hand if I had a hand," or like, "I'd kiss you if I had lips," that kind of thing. And she would say, "No feet." Like in a dream, she actually said that to somebody. She looked down, she went, "No feet." And so here's this license plate that says "No feet," and then the frame is, "I am a strange and unusual person," which is the line from Beetlejuice, right? When Lydia sees the ghosts.
Uh-huh.
And so Tamara's brother used to call her Lydia because he said that she was so like the character.
Mm-hmm.
So this was this little, see, synchronicity inside synchronicity inside synchronicity, and it's about seeing a ghost. And now that sounds silly, like if you say that to somebody, it seems like, well, that's just a bunch of silly coincidences. But it's also so much her sense of humor, right?
Yeah, I mean the percentage of a chance for like this Russian doll set of coincidences to happen
Exactly.
is so incredibly unlikely that it has to be something somewhat of a call it a divine message or just a message from the other
It's a
side.
practical joke almost, right? I mean, it's kind of it's like a friendly joke, and yet it's conveying this profound message of presence. And so now there were two of these dragonflies, so now Tanya has one and I have the other. And it was also funny because the lady didn't know anything about any of this, and she was like, in here, and she gave 3 hearts to Tanya as a special extra gift, right? So one for Tanya, one for me, and one for Tamara, and all these things, the car, the dragonfly wings, and the hearts were the same deep blue color that's Tamara's favorite color.
Wow.
So just these, and you get a bunch of these piled on each other, and that's just one little example. And it makes the universe into this fun, like kind of magical experience where there is some kind of communication going. And it's also interesting too that, when I talk about this on podcasts, how people are always like, my grandmother, it's usually grandmas, by the way. But it's like my grandmother did this, and then that happened, and then this, and they all have these experiences. And my feeling is that if we didn't live in a society that makes it impossible to talk about these things because you're just afraid to come off like you're an idiot, that we'd all know, because we all experienced them at one point or another in our lives.
And it almost seems like, they're very free and what's the word? Almost like it's not that, almost like the message that they're trying to convey that it's not that serious. Like, do you ever feel that like almost the playful like nature is like, dude, I get that in the moment it feels very serious, but I'm up here. I can tell you it's really not that serious.
Exactly. It's lighthearted. It's like it's unobstructed. You realize that it seems really heavy to you. It seems like, this long period of being alone and without me. Well, I'm actually right here, and it's not a long time. Like when you get where I am, you'll realize it's just a blink of an eye. And when you get here, you're going to have so much fun like I'm having because you are not this creature that's stuck in a body that's going to die with the body. You're going to be so glad to be out of that body. And that's one of the things that gets me going is like, because Tamara had so much abuse in her life before I met her, in her childhood and stuff. And I also had a terrible childhood. And like, she actually delivered a message through somebody where she said, that she could no longer do the work that she was doing in a body that was racked by ancient trauma and rage. And this is true. Tamara was dealing with old trauma and rage, a lifetime of having dealt with bullies and confronting them, and her body was like she was like a warrior who was running out of energy. She had just fought too many battles. And so she said, but to tell me that she was now free of that trauma. And when I thought about it, I was like, damn, I was like, Tamara without the trauma. damn, I want to know that girl. Like that, Tamara with the trauma was amazing, but Tamara without the trauma, like all the good parts of Tamara without any of the damage, shit. And then I started thinking about that about myself. Like, so someday I'm going to be without my trauma, like all the weird shit I learned from my war survivor parents and all the weird memories from my life and all the terrible things I did when I was young and all that stuff's going to be gone. I'm just going to be the best me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's almost like you are only what people call like the higher self. Like you exist as the higher self on that side.
Yes, exactly. You're free of the details, the mistakes, the silly little material world things that act as obstacles that obscure the light of your consciousness, right?
Yeah.
And now you're your individuality, like what really makes you you, all the most beautiful things about you, the soulful things, the things that belong to your soul are now free. So that freedom is like it's infinite, you're not impermanent anymore. And yeah, I can't imagine. I mean, it's that gets me going. And when I see her, she is like she's happy, man. She's always smiling and laughing and like just having a time. There's nothing solemn about it. And one of the messages that she sent me was, "Have no fear, because where I am, there is no fear."
Makes sense. Yep. Yeah, it's almost like I think it was Thomas Campbell that said that whenever you die, it's like taking off a tight shoe. It's
That's a great description. Yeah, man. That's what I felt like. Yeah, when I had that NDE. That's exactly right. Yeah. Because it's hard. Like Aristotle said that the angst of the soul in the body is like the ancient Etruscan pirate torture of tying a victim face to face with a corpse. Right?
Yeah.
Like the soul is just going, Jesus, get me out of here. Like the body's claustrophobic. And I always say to people, if we're not immortal, if we're not beings that originate outside time, then explain these things to me. After several million years of evolution, human beings still are not used to death. Like we don't get it. We live like we're never going to die. We take stupid risks. We do stupid shit. We don't get death. Also, everybody says the same thing as they get older. They always go, even my dad, who was a total atheist, I said to him once, when you look in the mirror and you see yourself, do you think, holy shit, like what happened? I still feel like the young guy in me. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, well, how does that figure? Like, why would you think that if all we are is our bodies? We'd be used to it by now, right? We'd be used to aging.
Yeah.
And by the way, in those books that we had written the book about, they called aging a superstition.
Oh, yeah.
They say that we hypnotize ourselves collectively into aging, right? So, like all the birthday cards that say, oh, you're 30 now, you're going to get fat and lose your hair, like that we all hypnotize each other into experiencing age in a certain way. But that when you are strongly in touch with your spirituality, with your soul, you don't age like that. And that's probably why Betty and Tamara didn't age normally, because they were so soulful that the soul kind of keeps the body energized and youthful. And
yeah, I feel
clear-headed
like,
even.
I recently found out that Prince, the pop star, was a Jehovah's Witness at some point. I don't know if he died a Jehovah's Witness or he used to be or something like that. And so I started looking into it because only thing I ever really knew about the Jehovah's Witnesses is that they'd come up and bang on your door and you'd have to feel bad by saying, basically a nice version of go fuck off or whatever.
Right.
But one thing that I really thought was interesting about what the Jehovah's Witnesses, and they're not the only ones, but they don't celebrate birthdays. And I think that it's related to that, whenever you're keeping track of the score of how many days that you've lived, maybe that in and of itself is what is causing you to age in the first place.
Yeah, I think so. And I also think of Plotinus, who would not allow his followers to celebrate his birthday because he said, why would you celebrate me having to come down here and get imprisoned in a body? He said, celebrate when I get out of here.
Yes, yes. Plotinus has definitely had a big impact on my understanding as far as the Neoplatonism, and I love all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I do
Um,
too.
well, look, usually every episode we always do a tarot card reading towards the end of the episode,
Yeah, I
you,
recall that.
and usually it encompasses the energy of the show one way or another. And as a
Hmm.
matter of fact, I decided to pull the card while you were glowingly talking about your wife, and I thought,
Okay.
well, you know what? I'm not going to say this is something channeled, but at least maybe it'll resonate at some point. And I ended up getting the reversed Five of Pentacles, which is pretty interesting because whenever it's upright, it means that you're feeling physically or financially depleted, and you're focusing on lack and all that kind of stuff. But got it reversed, and so I'm just going to read right here. It says the reversed Five of Pentacles in your reading can indicate that you are moving away from the financial challenges that you've experienced, but have lingering fears about falling back into hardship. Focusing on your spiritual practice or simply choosing to have faith that your situation is changing will give you the boost that you need to release the feelings of lack and loss.
Yeah.
I don't think that
Yeah,
that's
it's not.
necessarily
It's.
only financial, but
I was going to say it's not financial, but that's pretty much right on the ball as far as that's where I'm working on right now is like to find that joy of life while I'm still here and to not be stuck in the feeling of loss. And
yes.
so that's quite accurate.
Well, you know what they say. I mean, I'm sure you've heard this a million times, but somebody passing is harder on the living than it is on the dead, right? Like, and so the part of us really wants them to be here for us. It's not even necessarily
Yeah.
like maybe we are crying because we don't know exactly what happens whenever they die, and you hate to even imagine somebody going into a bad place or anything like that. But I think for the most part, it is. We get so attached and connected to the people that have made such a strong impact on our life that we don't want to lose that. And especially
Yeah.
somebody like you losing your wife. I mean, that was your soulmate. I mean, it's gleaming from you. You didn't even have to say anything about it. I could just tell, how glowingly you speak of her. So, I mean, it's quite awesome that you came over here and were able to tell the story about, so many experiences that you've had with her, all the amazing, like crazy synchronicities and all the messages that are coming from the other side. I think that will definitely speak volumes, for anybody that's listening.
I hope so. And I know she's good. I'm not worried at all about her. And I'm selfish, man. I mean, I miss the sex. I miss the laughter. I miss her, hearing her hanging around downstairs playing the music she loved. And it's all selfish. It's like I'm glad she's free, and I'm also kind of glad that she doesn't have to see all this bullshit that's happening in the world because she used to be she would take that to heart. She had a lot of compassion for people, and it made her really upset when she couldn't defend people. And I think this would have been a very hard time for her to live. And so, in a way, I'm happy that she's not here experiencing it in her body.
Yeah.
All my pain is for wanting her, wanting her sitting on my lap like she used to, wanting to rub her feet and just all the silly things, make her coffee in the morning. And I know how selfish that is. And but on the other hand, that's ritual. You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
when you're in love and you do these things together, it's like the greatest ritual of them all.
Well, it makes sense that it would be a ritual because it sounds like you guys generated some serious magic over there.
Hmm.
If you don't mind, could you tell our listeners, we call them the initiates, could you tell them where they can find you and your book and everything else, where they can find everything
Sure.
you?
Yeah, and if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. It doesn't have to be now if you need to wrap this up, but you can always reach out to me, or if you do have time, we can have them answered now. But you can find me on Instagram. I've got a Substack. I've got a YouTube channel. I'm on Facebook as well. So any of those places, you can find me, and you can find a lot of really interesting content about Tamara. I post a lot about her and a lot of her work and a lot of our experiences together. So you'll actually be able to see a picture of the dragonflies with the lapis wings and those kind of things, and check out our various projects. And I'm also happy to speak to people. So if you have questions or something that you want to share, you can always reach out to me. Probably the best places to do that are it's probably Instagram,
Okay.
but
Perfect.
any of those platforms would be okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Ronnie. It's such a pleasure always talking to you. You are just one of our favorite people.
Oh,
And,
thank you.
like, I'm not going to lie. There's been several times where I'm like, hey, Sean, let's reach out to Ronnie because it's been a while. And we're like, no, we want to wait for the perfect moment for this. And of course, he can't be here for it. So it's,
That's so sad.
it's
Please give him love, and we'll have to do it again so I can see him and we can talk.
Yes, absolutely will. Well, look, we are going to be getting over to the meditation here in just a few minutes. So for those who want to stay and meditate, just come on and come hang out and we'll bliss out a little bit. And, but yeah, Ronnie, thank you, man. This was an absolute pleasure and we definitely want to do it again. But look, if Ronnie Pontiac came here and he taught you anything, it's that you don't know what you don't know. So don't just get weird. This is usually Sean's part, but stay weird. That's a deep cut right there. And it really does cause a lot of inner reflection whenever you go in there with a specific goal. And it's like you don't even really have to search for it. It's just so obvious. It just comes to you. Whatever it is. I'm sure everybody has their own thing. Maybe it's a feeling or a thing or a person or an ideal situation. But yeah, it's it's crazy because meditation can allow you, especially that kind of meditation, it can allow you to not only envision what it looks like, but what it feels like to actually have that thing. Man, it's like like you just had it. Man, that's why meditation is freaking addictive, dude. Because inside, whenever you go inside, you are everything. And that's what a lot of the enlightened individuals and yogis and whatnot will say, that whenever you're going through anything tough, or you feel like you're anxiety, or you're desperate, or you're whatever negative emotion that you have, that it's ultimately, there's obviously things that could suggest you have that feeling, or could, kind of give you that feeling from the outside, but it's ultimately up to you to accept it. So if somebody calls you an asshole, you have an instant decision to make. It's like, you could take that to heart and really let it affect you and ultimately let it lower your vibration, or however you look at it. Or you can just say, that's your opinion. That's doesn't really affect me. It's like Optimistic would say, if you don't accept the hate, then who does it belong to? And conversely, it could work the other way too. That whenever maybe you're feeling a lack of love, or a lack of whatever it is, that you can really feel it. And not like you can fully internalize that exact feeling of whatever it is that you're desiring, whatever that may be. Everybody has their own thing, but man, extremely vivid and visual. And, I just imagined that I was kind of like embracing somebody. Felt incredibly real. But all of that, it's, if there is no separation, then of course that would be why you can experience something like that. Because without separation, you would always be able to experience that. Maybe that's what you experience on the other side, or I don't know. I don't remember. I don't think most of us remember what the other side's like, but seems awesome. But I think that at the same time, this place can seem awesome too. It's just about trying to interpret it. And I really love that, Ronnie had mentioned, mainly towards the end of his life, and about like how he was talking about, you know, I really wish that I wouldn't have gotten into the ceremonial magic and all that kind of stuff. He goes, man, I just, you know, wish that I would have just taught people to connect with the universe or connect with reality. Like that's one of the most magical things you can do. And yeah, it does feel like that because ultimately it's not, you know, you and, you know, your significant other and your kids and your dogs and your job and all that stuff. If everything's one, then it's all you. And if it's all you, then you'd be able to kind of see and imagine and feel everything in meditation because there is no separation in there. I don't know. What a crazy mind fuck. And if this is all just one physical reality, then why is that possible? You know, is it just the gift of imagination? I mean, if you got to think about it, like if it's just imagination, why did we evolve to keep that? You know, all the things that we have evolved, everybody has their own opinions about evolution and stuff like that. I'm talking about, you know, mentally, physically, emotionally, the things that are meant to keep us alive and to keep us thriving and stuff like that. And that's why I think that we never evolved out of needing sleep. Because the sleep every night, especially if you can wake up and remember your dreams, it's just that reminder every single day that there's more than just this physical reality. Yeah, that's just stuff that I think about on a regular basis. But I do love about how, you know, Ronnie was going into how playful and everything that his wife is on the other side. That's amazing. And everybody else is relaying him messages and just the fun little names that they come up with. That's alien, I think. Not to say that it's an alien. I'm just saying, like, I think that what we call aliens are probably something like that. Maybe there's other universes with other people. I don't know. More evolved beings or what have you. But I know every time I go outside and maybe I see an orb or something like that, it doesn't feel alien, you know. Of course, what would I know what alien feels like anyway? But why would it feel loving and familiar and telepathic and all these other things? I don't know. I'm just rambling on. That was a really, really fun show. Definitely caused a lot of inner reflection. I feel like I've been that way all day today, too. So weird. I don't know what the fuck is going on in the sky right now, astrologically speaking. Maybe I'm just dehydrated. Could be it. Maybe I'm just crazy. Maybe we're all crazy. And if that's the case, then welcome to the Nut House, baby. But anyhow, all right, guys, I and y'all, let's dip out of here. Go get a little break, maybe take a little nap ski, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Imagine what would have happened if we hadn't attracted the magic we had back when we couldn't fathom. Life is a fantasy, not with the vanity, not the way it was back then. So I grab my pen and write it down like a scripture. Mr. Mystic, making hits for the misfits. The show where you don't know what you don't know when it's on again with Sean and Jonathan. Yeah.